Hey Kaiki, Richard Metal Fan Tadla, bringing you guys a brand new 2021 album review. And today we're going to be looking into the new album from the band Korpiklaani entitled Yaltala, I probably butchered that, which is released today under Nuclear Blast Records. Now, Korpiklaani has, for those of you who don't know, they're a folk metal band from Lahti, Finland, and these guys have been around since 1993. I discovered Korpiklaani probably actually around 10 years ago or so, back when I was in high school. I think they were like one of the first folk metal bands I heard, but along with Ensiferum and stuff. And before Korpiklaani, name was Korpiklaani, they were originally called a Shamani Duo, which they were actually just straight up folk metal before they actually turned into metal and stuff. And then after that, they changed their name into Shaman, which is actually, and then they started more adding of like folk metal and also the metal stuff. And now they're the folk metal, and then they also have like elements of like the shamanic drum, hyok and humpa. And then the release to actually I forget what it was one of their first albums was when they were called that, but then after that they actually call to Korpiklaani, and they've put out their first album since under the Korpiklaani name since Spirit of the Forest in 2003. um and they just put out like albums since then. This is the band's 11th album, and this is a follow-up to their previous album, which came out in 2018, called Kui Kija. And this album, I mean, it's definitely Korpiklaani. Like Korpiklaani, like apart from all the other folk metal bands, they're just really just a fun band. Like they definitely have like a lot of like fun party vibes. In fact, they have like songs about like drinking alcohol, like beer, vodka, tequila, just some really good drinking songs. And pretty much all their songs are sung in Finnish, and they're just really just fun to listen to. Just production wise, like Korpiklaani's music is really great. The vocals, like Yanni Jalva's vocals, just has that grit to it, and just the guitars are pretty great. So the bass is audible. I just love like the accordion and the violin, which is pretty interesting. You don't really hear that in really any in metal genres at all, but it's only in folk. And it just I'm probably just rambled on for too long. So just dive right into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is Virikoria, which is just a very anthem like thundering drum, which starts it off, and it just really just hypes it up with the great build up. And it has some catchy riffs, some layers of great instrumentation, and sort of like the raspy singing, which creates like a really great strong move. And it's a very great way to start off this album. And then we move on to Niemi, which this song pretty much has like an epic feeling to it. It almost kind of gives me a little bit of like power metal vibes to it. It's also really melodic as well. Probably the most melodic sounding I've heard from any Korpiklaani song I've heard. Next song is Levaluta. Has a very groovy kind of like rhythmic parts to it and very catchy melody. It just works so well within like the singing style, and also just like I don't know, it's a good song. Then move on to Mili, which has a pretty good drum intro, and it just goes straight into just typical like folk metal tune. It's a great song. Then move on to Tuliton, which kind of like takes a like Korpiklaani's like sound to like a new level with like heavier kind of like a sonically speaking. It just soars in like a very kind of like epic fantasy kind of way. And then we move on to next song on the album is called Sanaton Ma, which kind of sounding a little bit melodic and very catchy from like the 80s. It's a pretty solid song. Then we move on to Kiryu. Like pretty much many of the other songs of this song, or this album I should say, I can't even speak today, I'm sorry. It starts up with a great mad intro, before it just goes into like a steady riffs and the verses says that just lead into like the rest of the song. It pretty much sets the pace, which has pretty much like a nice break of just like slow down the album. But it's a pretty good song. Mirio, which kind of like drives with like a very kind of like a almost like an early 80s metal track, which I could feel like what I love about this album, that's so upbeat compared to like previous albums, which has like the trademarks of the band just going through like different motions. So and that's one thing I love about Korpiklaani. Like every song they have like different like vibes, different like emotions and feels to it. Then we move on to Poja, which is kind of similar to Kiryu, who has a great, like, insane intro that just progresses with some great riffs, and then it has like a little slow break, which is a good song. And then we move on to Julio Tomat, which I feel like this song is one of the greatest on this album, which has like a massive wall of sound, some great layered like arrangements, topped with some great energy to it. Enolin Erkit, which I think is a pretty solid song. I dig it. And then the the album closes with Pidyot, which in my opinion is probably my personal favorite off the album. And I think it's a pretty good way to end this album, end everything all on a high note, which has some really great guitar lines, some drums and percussion. Like, it's like the drumming just makes you want to dance, and it's the same thing with like the folk instrumentation. It really just like also sets like a mood for a fun party and makes you want to drink a beer. Now overall, Yelta by Yahalap, I can't even fucking say the name. I'm sorry. The new Korpiklaani album is pretty great. So if I had to give this album a score, I'm going to give the new Korpiklaani album a solid 8 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of the new album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal. Kitos.